everybody, how's it going? It's Stout Man coming back at you again. No funny little thing here because I wanted to talk just off the cuff. Another one of those things where I've got something to say and I don't want to set things up or whatever. I don't want to lose what I want to say. I'm very passionate about something right now. I want to talk about something I'm very passionate about and get it off my chest while I can. As you may have surmised from the title, this is going to be about the new Ghostbusters trailer. Now, unlike other people who do trailer criticisms and reviews and reactions, God, don't use that word, reactions. The Fine Bros will come after you. I know, old joke. It's old hat at this point on the internet, I know. But I had to get that out there. I didn't get a chance to take part in that joke. I just realized right now, by the way, that I look remarkably like Louis C.K. right now. I want to talk about this trailer because people have been reacting to it negatively, like very negatively. Now, when I saw the trailer, I was actually very pleased with it. I was very happy with it. Now, when I say that, I'm going to explicitly and extract isn't the right word. I'm going to just explain in intricate detail. There we go. The things that I liked about it and the things that I did not like about it. All right. So first of all, to get this out of the way, I do not think that it was an excellent trailer. The editing I didn't think was anything special. I thought that it was kind of punchy the way that most trailers nowadays are. Whoever they got to edit the trailer didn't really do a very good job with this one. With trailers nowadays, it's very, I say nowadays, but it's always kind of been very hit or miss with trailers in terms of conveying the right message and getting the right thing across to people who are interested in seeing the movie. With that being said, like, the editing was nothing spectacular. The choices they made for what to show were not really impressive, so to speak, but it did the trick for me. I saw enough from the humor and the camaraderie between the characters and the direction that they were going with in this movie to kind of get a sense for what to expect from it, and what I saw, I was very happy with. All right. I will say the CGI did not look great. The CGI looked okay, though. It looked pretty good. It looked decent, right? It didn't look horrifyingly bad the way that it does in some modern remakes and reimaginings and whatnot that you'll see hitting the movie screens every now and then, right? But that being said, it's important to note that CGI is kind of a foregone conclusion in movies nowadays. The movie studios don't like to give in to practical effects, all right? It doesn't matter if movies like Mad Max and Star Wars are taking home tons of freaking awards. It doesn't matter to them. They still labor under this fucking delusion that everyone wants to see CGI, that CGI is the best option for movies, and that it's just the only way that you should be doing things. Which to me is ridiculous. It's absolutely ludicrous because when you look at the trailer, or not the trailer, but if you look at the credits for any movie at the end of a movie and you look at the CGI credits, you'll note that there are like hundreds of people who work on the CGI for these movies. And comparatively, you could be hiring fewer people to do practical effects, technically. And you might not even have to pay as much, or if you do, you're paying just as much as you would for CGI, typically. I guess sometimes it can get a little bit more expensive, and the costs, you don't really know how much more expensive they're going to get. You can't really, say, I'm only willing to spend this much. You have to be willing to spend however much it's going to take, kind of thing. Although I feel like that's probably very much what it's like with CGI as well, so what the fuck is the excuse for only using CGI? Especially when we've shown time and time again that you can do practical effects, that people prefer practical effects over CGI, but I digress. What I did like about these ghosts in the trailer and the CGI with the ghosts was that it was clear to me that they were attempting to follow in the footsteps of the original movie in terms of the way that the ghosts looked, the style of the ghosts, the way their faces looked, the way that, like, in some cases they had like no skin or whatever, and in other cases they just kind of had a ghouly kind of, not like, I don't even know how to describe it, but they had the aesthetic of the same kind of aesthetic of the ghosts from the original movies, is what I would say. That being said, there were more practical effects in the original movies than there were in these, and they just, I won't say they always looked great, because when you go back and watch them now in high definition, they didn't always look great. They looked okay. They got the job done then, but they weren't fantastic, right? So when somebody says, "Well, the CGI ghosts don't look good in this trailer," I'm just like, "Well, the practical effect ghosts in the original movies didn't look that good either. Let's just be fucking honest here." Uh, with that said, I felt like, it's hard to know exactly what you're going to do. I feel like in this movie they probably should have gone for a combination of practical and CGI, and for all I know, they did. And I haven't seen the movie yet. I've only seen the fucking trailer. I'm only going based off of what I've seen in the trailer, and the trailer's only shown me CGI, so that's all I know, right? But it could very well be an example of a combination of CGI and practical effects. And from what I saw, it looked pretty good. I don't know why people are so upset over that. There are a lot of people who are saying the CGI looked terrible. What are you smoking? Why are you saying that? What about the CGI makes you think that it doesn't look good? And I demand that you be fucking specific with this, all right? You need to specifically point out details about the design that make it not so good in terms of the CGI, all right? You need to say, well, I didn't like the way their eyes looked, or I didn't think that they looked realistic, or I felt like they just kind of floated across the screen and didn't really appear to be the kind of ghostly apparitions that I remember from the original movies, or or even they went too realistic with some of them, kind of thing. Just something. Explain to me your thought process when you say that the CGI didn't look good. I came up there with a few examples of things that I would shoot down immediately as being bullshit, but whatever. There are examples of things that I would accept as a criticism to say, throw something at me that is concrete, right? That's kind of, to me, a kind of concrete example of, well, I have a problem with this, I have a problem with that. Don't just say, well, the CGI didn't look any good. I didn't like CGI because it looked like crap. Ugh. Shut the hell up with that nonsense, all right? Come back to me, come at me with some legitimate evidence, all right? In criticism, we deal with actual evidence within the text of what we've seen, which is why it's so very difficult to actually judge a movie by its trailer, because it's very much like judging a book by its cover. You're not getting all the information, you're getting part of the information. In fact, it's not even like judging the book by its cover, because you're not seeing the cover necessarily. I guess you do see the cover with the title of the movie at the end, right? But you're judging the book. You're really judging the movie by the back of it. That gives you the little synopsis, right? You're judging it by its little synopsis, and you're saying, well, clearly this movie is going to be a pile of shit because the synopsis doesn't look good to me. You don't have enough information to go off of to make that determination. And if you're going to specifically say things about the trailer or mention things about the trailer that you didn't like, then you need to specifically mention what those things were, and not just say things like, oh, I thought that it was too generic. The problem I have with the comment that it is too generic is that the term generic has within it the slug, a slug, or a root to it that is genre. The root to generic is genre. And the genre of this movie in particular is actually a combination of horror and comedy, which is the exact same genre as the original Ghostbusters movies, horror and comedy. So, if you're saying that it's too generic, what I hear when I see that or hear that is it's following too closely in the footsteps of the original movie. That's what I hear because you're saying it follows the genre too closely. I don't understand how that's a bad thing. If you're trying to pay respect to the original source material, then of course it's going to be generic. Of course it's going to be doing a lot of the same things that the original movie did because that's the genre that it's based off of. All right, that's what it's based on. You'd be throwing a fit if it wasn't based on that. All right, that's the thing that I have. That's the problem I have with that, is that it's kind of a double standard in a lot of ways. Because I can guarantee you that if they had taken a different approach with this, you would have been pissed off that they took a different approach with this rather than trying to recreate and pay homage and pay respect to the original source material. So, what that tells me is you have a problem with it if it pays respect to the original source material, and you have a problem with it if it diverts or veers off course from the original source material in any way. And I know this because I've seen it before. I've seen that reaction from fans before of all these remakes and reimaginings. Honestly, I think that a lot of the problem with this, a lot of the reason that people are upset with these kinds of movies, these remakes and reimaginings, is because there's so many of them out there. And people are getting frustrated, they're getting tired of it, they've been tired of it, right? And there are times in film history when the common thread of just doing remakes and doing the same thing over and over again gets tiring, and the audiences are telling the studios we need to take a break from this, we need to move on to something new, something different. And in this case, I genuinely get the sense that that's what they're saying, but the movie studios aren't going to pick that up, all right? And the reason they're not going to pick that up is because the last 2 years have literally been the most successful years in the entire history of film. So for the film industry. So as much as it is absolutely true that people are getting tired of seeing the same old thing over and over again, and they're getting tired of seeing the remakes and they're getting tired of seeing the reimaginings, as much as that's undeniable, the film industry isn't going to take that message away. They're going to look at what the dollars and cents say, and they're going to see that they're making money hand over foot, and they're not going to listen. They're not going to listen to you. They're not going to listen. And the problem is that they're not even going to care if you vote with your dollar and don't go to see this movie, all right? It's not going to stop them from doing the same old shit like putting CGI in every single movie, making remakes and reimaginings of movies over and over again. As of yet, I haven't found a way to convince them that we don't want to see that anymore, but all I'm telling you, I'm just the bearer of bad news here that it doesn't matter if you don't like it, they're going to keep making this shit, alright? But that being said, I don't think that this movie is going to be shit. I think that this Ghostbusters movie is actually going to be pretty good. I don't know where it's going to rank in the movies in terms of quality, but I have high hopes for it based on what I've seen in the trailer. And I don't know why people don't have high hopes for it. I can understand. You look at it and you're saying, okay, so what they've done is that they've put female characters in pretty much the exact same role as the male characters had in the original movies, and they're just literally reimagining what they did with the original movies and putting it into a new movie. I understand, and that becomes especially troublesome when you see what's her face, the black character. I hesitate to say it, but it's true. The token black character, the female Winston character, if you will, which I had a problem. I wouldn't say when I was a kid I had a problem with it, right? But when I grew up and learned about this kind of stuff and what it really meant, I developed an issue with the Winston character in the Ghostbusters movie, because it just felt really. I guess maybe it was commentary to a certain degree on the token character, but it wasn't readily apparent enough to get through to most audiences, and it's still not readily apparent enough in this movie. I can just tell from the trailer already, because they're literally just taking like the same approach of, we're gonna throw somebody in there because they gotta have the token minority, you know, and it's bothersome to me because it follows in the exact same tradition of the trope that we saw in the first movie. And I know, like, yes, they're paying homage and they're being respectful of the original source material there, but I feel like that in particular is an area where maybe they didn't need to be respectful to that racist fucking source material. Okay? But regardless, I also didn't have a problem with them putting more black people in film, because quite frankly, as we've learned recently with the whole Oscar debacle, they don't put enough black people in film. And honestly, the movies that we see black people in are typically not like the high quality, high art kind of stuff. Not to say that black people necessarily want to be in movies like that. Black actors want to be in movies like that, but maybe some do, and I know for a fact a lot of them do. Uh, you don't necessarily always see Morgan Freeman in these comedy flicks. You don't necessarily see Samuel L. Jackson only doing comedy flicks. You see Marlon Wayans doing only comedy flicks, and he's happy doing those kinds of movies, but that's neither here nor there. It's just, some people like to do some kinds of movies and some people like to do other kinds of movies, and it's kind of disappointing that if you are a person of a certain background, of a certain racial background, you're going to have less of an opportunity to do certain kinds of projects. Sorry, um, based on the fact that you are from that minority. So that to me is really disappointing. And when I see that character in this Ghostbusters trailer, that's like the first thing that's coming to mind for me, and it's kind of a disappointment. But because that's one of those things that you would have thought we would have gotten past, at least in the film industry, by this point, but apparently not. You know, um, I don't know why we couldn't have maybe any Asian characters in there. Like, why does it have to be, one token black character and three white characters? Like, all I'm saying is I would have loved to have seen Margaret Cho as a Ghostbuster. I think that would have been fucking awesome, right? But yes, I don't necessarily I don't necessarily have a problem with them sticking with the same character archetypes, right? And I'm sure that's where it was coming from, not necessarily the whole racial thing. But that being said, like, that doesn't stop me from kind of having a problem with that racial thing, that racial aspect to it. Because in that case, they didn't necessarily have to do that, right? You can still have a Winston like character who doesn't have to be the token character and doesn't have to be uh, any particular kind of race or doesn't have to be any particular kind of character necessarily. He can still be like the kind of wisecracking guy who nobody expects to be anything other than somebody looking for a paycheck, but actually ends up being an integral member of the team, kind of thing. Um, you know what I mean? They didn't have to have the exact same character archetype in that case. And the thing is that it's readily apparent with the other characters that, like, okay, Kristen Wiig is clearly the Venkman character. Melissa McCarthy is clearly the Ray character. What's her face, whose name I can't remember, I'm sorry, is clearly the Egon character, right? But at the same time, they all also have their own personalities that separate them from what the original characters were like. So the Egon character is more of a badass kind of character, which I fucking love. The Melissa McCarthy character is kind of more of a jokester and not in the dad joke kind of way like Ray was. Venkman, Kristen Wiig's Venkman-esque character is, um, well, okay, that one is probably closer to Venkman, but still not exactly the same thing because Kristen Wiig is no Bill Murray. No offense to her, no offense to Bill Murray, no offense to anybody. Just, they're two different types of people with two different types of comedy to them, and as much as she may have tried to pull that off, it didn't fully come across. At least not in the trailer that I saw. I don't know for sure because it's just a trailer, and I'm working with what I've seen in the trailer, just like everybody else. And based on what I've seen in the trailer, she's hilarious. Kristen Wiig is hilarious in this movie, but she's not necessarily exactly like Venkman. You know what I mean? I don't have a problem with that, though. That's the thing. I would prefer to see characters who are similar to the original characters, but because they are different in very many obvious ways, have differences as well, which is something that I saw in the trailer. And only reason I'm pointing this out is to say that in the case of the black character, I didn't feel like there was enough different there from Winston to really make it anything other than yet another attempt to throw in a token black character. So I don't know. Maybe I'm reading into it too much. I'm definitely, in fact, definitely reading into it too much from a fucking trailer. But that being said, those are my feelings on the characters themselves. But in terms of the writing for the characters, that is what really struck me. The writing for the characters is fucking phenomenal. All right, just from the few scenes we got to see with the dialogue between the characters, it strikes me that the writing for this movie was dead on. This is exactly what the Ghostbusters are like. This is exactly what the Ghostbusters should be like. This is exactly the kind of thing that we should be coming to expect from it. Now, a lot of people that I've seen complaining about the trailer said it was too jokey or too comedic. Where's the scariness? Why is it all slapsticky? Now, I actually fucking read somebody make it. I heard that, all right? I heard the comment that this movie, this trailer, has too much slapstick in it. The implication being that Ghostbusters is not a slapstick environment. There's not enough room for slapstick in Ghostbusters. In the original movie, in the fucking ballroom scene, the flowers are still standing. That is a physical comedy scene. A clumsy physical comedy scene, which is the fucking definition of slapstick. It furthers on as we get to see the reactions of the guy out front who's going to be paying for this whole thing, right? Out in front of the ballroom, as he's got the doors closed, and all you can do is hear what's going on inside. You can't actually see what's going on inside because the doors are closed. And what you're hearing is a lot of crashing, a lot of destruction going on in there. And so he's freaking out. The guy's freaking out like, what is all that noise going on in there? They better not be fucking anything up. That, physical comedy. The crashing, the banging, clumsiness, which leads to the reaction physically of this guy standing outside the door, which is slapstick. All right. We got that out of the way. We can also move on to the end scene where Stay Puft Marshmallow Man clumsily gets brought into existence as the monster that's going to destroy the world, right? This never would have happened. The monster never would have existed if Ray had not thought of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man in the first place, which was a clumsy act. And as a reaction at the end of, or as a result at the end of the movie, when they finally defeat the monster, this Marshmallow Man is turned into tons of fucking molten marshmallow goop that ends up all over everybody, including the dickless wonder that tried to get the Ghostbusters in trouble initially. So that is another example of classic, undeniable slapstick from the Ghostbusters movie, the Ghostbusters franchise that apparently is beyond slapstick. There's no place for Ghostbusters in slapstick. Oh, except for the ballroom scene. Oh, except for the he slimed me scene. Oh, except for that scene at the end of the movie. Oh, except for fucking every scene in both fucking movies. So, to the very concept that slapstick doesn't belong in Ghostbusters, you're wrong. It's all over the goddamn place in Ghostbusters. It always has been, and it always fucking should be. Because that's Ghostbusters, alright? I don't know what you're remembering about Ghostbusters, but your Ghostbusters that you remember is not the Ghostbusters that I remember fondly and I watch every other year or so on fucking Blu-ray because I love the goddamn franchise. I move my head and you can see over there a proton pack. Did I say proton pack? I'm sorry. A containment unit, and then it's got the fucking light shining on it, but you can't see. It's a vinyl Ecto 1. Very cool stuff, I know. Regardless, I'm a Ghostbusters fan, right? I've been watching Ghostbusters forever. I think I actually watched the cartoons before I ever saw the movies when I was a kid, because the original movie came out when I was, well, when I had just been born, essentially. It came out in 1984. I was born in 1984. So it took me until I think I was like 5 or 6 or something like that before I actually saw the movie on TV and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, I became a fan of the movies as well, but I remember vividly watching the cartoons as well when they were on in the late 80s and early 90s and whatnot. So, yeah, I mean, that was my introduction to them, was the goofiness of the cartoons and whatnot. And I mean, there's definitely some freaky kind of scariness in there, but it's the same kind of freaky kind of scariness that you could expect from the original Scooby-Doo cartoon, you know? It had the same level of scariness to it as a Scooby-Doo cartoon. And that was in the Ghostbusters cartoon, the real Ghostbusters cartoon. I remember I actually have somewhere a little ruler, a real Ghostbusters ruler that I had when I was a kid. I was a huge fan of the real Ghostbusters. I loved that show, right? And then after I got old enough, I watched the movies, and I loved the movies as well. But one thing that stuck with me is that as I was watching the cartoons, like, these are goofy Scooby-Doo-esque kinds of cartoons. And then I watched the movie, and it's a little bit more adult, right? There's more adultness to it there. There are more adult jokes there that a lot of them I wasn't picking up on at the time, but eventually as I got older I did. But even then, to me, it was very funny. It was a humorous movie. It was a comedy movie before it was horror movie. It was more comedy than it was horror movie. And yet I hear people complaining that this movie doesn't look scary at all. There's too much humor in it. Are you kidding me? They made a new Ghostbusters movie that's more humor than it is horror, and you're complaining because they stayed true to that source material? Are you kidding me? And you're complaining that, like, nothing about these characters feels right, it feels too generic, and the dialogue feels like it fits right in with anything that the original Ghostbusters would have said. You have a problem with that? You have a problem with the Ghostbusters feeling like, oh, I don't know, the fucking Ghostbusters? You have a problem with that? Are you kidding me? What is your main malfucking function, alright? People who are getting upset over this trailer need to take a step back and shut the fuck up. Because they don't know what the fuck they're talking about, number one. I hear the term generic. I hear, well, there's too much slapstick. I hear, oh, it's too humorous. There's not enough horror elements to it. I hear, the original movie was so scary. The original movies were so scary. It's not supposed to be like this. Like, what are you even fucking talking about? That's not even remotely accurate. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on the trailer. And on the people who didn't like the trailer because they're fucking idiots. Maybe it's not the greatest trailer editing wise, but it did the trick for me at least. And honestly, there was nothing in the trailer that stood out to me as being offensive in any way, shape, or form, or really upsetting in any way, shape, or form for somebody like me who is a Ghostbusters fan. So, if you're a Ghostbusters fan and you think this isn't being respectful of the franchise, you're wrong. If you're a Ghostbusters fan and you think that it should be more scary, no, it was never really like. I mean, there were scary elements of the fucking movie, but in the movies, and even scary elements of the original cartoons, but there was nothing that was so scary that you couldn't laugh at it. You know, there was in the first movie you had the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, this giant towering fucking marshmallow man. It's kind of freaky, right? But at the same time, there's nothing about that that is necessarily too scary because it's a fucking marshmallow man, all right? And they take it out by setting it on fucking fire by crossing the streams. So, when you look at a movie like Ghostbusters and you say that it was scary back then, where's the scares here? Well, first of all, you've seen a trailer. You haven't seen the whole movie. You don't know if there's going to be something more scary than what you've seen in the fucking trailer. You do not fucking know yet. Second of all, most of the scares that were in the original Ghostbusters movies were not entirely scary. They were usually like laced with humor, almost always laced with humor. There were a few scenes. There were a few scenes that are kind of fucked up, right? Like at the same time, those scenes that were fucked up were typically followed with scenes that were humorous, right? So like, yeah, the fucking dog creature chasing down Rick Moranis' character and attacking him, although you didn't get to really see what happened there. In front of a restaurant, that could be considered creepy, but it's also kind of humorous that it happens in front of a restaurant and nobody's doing anything about it. And then, after all that happens, you see Rick Moranis and with this creature inside of him, possessing him, walking around like telling horses that they will be freed when they look for the sign and they will be freed. They eventually run into the Ghostbusters themselves and like, you know, they're recording this fucking creature. Yes, have some, you know, that scene. I mean, yes, there's a creepy element to that, and there's a creepy element to these creatures entirely, and to Gozer and whatnot, but they are always laced with humor, and if they're not laced with humor, eventually you see something humorous involving them or surrounding them and that character that is kind of creepy, right? So you're never left to fear something for too long in the Ghostbusters movies. They always find some way to poke fun at whatever is scary. That, to me, is a foundational element of what the Ghostbusters was, is, and always should be. So when people say, well, it's not scary enough, like, I don't know how or why you're remembering it this way, but it was not that, and it never was that, and it never should be that. So shut the fuck up. Yeah, I mean, I can understand if people aren't necessarily very happy with the results in certain cases. I can understand if they don't want to watch the movie for personal reasons or they're not interested for one reason or another, but there are some reasons that I will not accept for not liking this movie. Primarily it doesn't pay respect to the source material. Yes, it does in several definable areas that you can prove with evidence from the goddamn trailer. Or like, oh, it's too generic. Well, of course it's going to be fucking generic, alright? It's a fucking remake. If it's not generic, then you complain. If it is generic, then you complain. There's no winning on that side, apparently. And a perfect example of that to me is what happened with the Evil Dead franchise, right? Evil Dead, the first movie, starts out as it's a horror comedy, but it's more horror than it is comedy, right? The second one goes decidedly more into the favor of more comedy than horror. The third one is just a straight up comedy with horror elements, all right? And that's the one, Army of Darkness, the one that I think most people remember from back in the day. So, of course, they do the remake of Evil Dead and they try to go back to the original source material. They try to make something that's more horror related, not necessarily comedy, which is very much what the original movie was. It was very much a horror more than it was a comedy. There were certain elements of it that were comedic, but that doesn't mean that they were necessarily trying to be comedic all the time with these. They were trying, in some cases, to make something more serious, and it just ended up being kind of funny, kind of thing, you know? So, the original roots of Evil Dead very much are serious, and that ended up becoming not as serious over time. So, when people complained about the original, about the remake of Evil Dead, that it was not in fitting with the source material, I kind of like balked at that. I had to say, what the fuck are you even talking about? Of course it is. That was the source material. It was more horror than it was humor. If you're going to complain that it wasn't humorous enough, that it wasn't funny enough, and you're going to complain that that means it's not true enough to the source material, then you don't know what the source material was. The source material was the original Evil Dead, right? So, unless they're making Evil Dead 2, and Evil Dead 2 is going to be like referencing the original Evil Dead 2, then shut the fuck up with the whole it's not funny enough bullshit, because it was never supposed to, like, in a lot of ways it was never originally supposed to be funny. Yes, there were elements of comedy in it, and yes, there were elements that were not supposed to be funny that ended up being funny, and you know, it just worked out like that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the original source material was supposed to be funny entirely, and that the new remake had to be somewhat funny in any way, shape, or form. They can go for a new, darker take on that if they want to, because that's what the original source material was trying to do in the fucking first place. It was trying to be a little bit darker, alright? And it was a little bit darker. It was a lot darker, in fact, than all the other Evil Dead movies. So when I look at that, and I see people were upset with it because it didn't fit the original source material, even though it did, I have to kind of draw a comparison, because here in Ghostbusters is another horror comedy that people are saying doesn't fit the source material, even though it fucking does. Yeah, I don't understand all the hate. I know that a lot of people don't like this movie because they Mary Sued it, or they put a bunch of female characters in where male characters used to exist. Who fucking cares? And I see people saying, well, women can't be funny. And to that, I just have to say, if you make that statement, you are undeniably a sexist, all right? It's undeniable that if that is a sexist comment, women can't be funny. You can't be funny. You're a fucking asshole. Go fuck off. Fuck right the fuck off with that sexist bullshit, all right? If any of that has anything to do with how you feel, if you feel like you don't like this movie because it's got women in it and you don't think women can be funny, then you're a sexist, and your opinions on that matter are false. You know, like, you're just wrong, all right? So, Yeah, a lot of people, I think, don't like it for those reasons, but then I think a lot of people don't like it because they got their nostalgia blinders on and they don't really remember what the original source material was like. They don't really remember what Ghostbusters was, is, and should be. They are remembering something that they want to remember. You know, they're remembering the feeling that they want to remember about how this movie made them feel, and not necessarily what it actually was, you know? They're misremembering what Ghostbusters is. And to that I say, you know, go back and watch it. Go back and watch the original Ghostbusters. And I mean, like, you know, really watch it. And then go back and watch some of the cartoons as well. And ask yourself what feeling they were really going for with this writing and with this concept. And then ask yourself if this trailer for this movie, and in fact, if by then the movie has come out, if this movie is fitting in with that concept. And I think that what you'll find is that yes, it is. And there's no reason to dislike this movie or this trailer based on some unfounded ideal that you have of what you think Ghostbusters is supposed to be. It's just ridiculous. It's nonsense. It's stupid. I haven't heard one good argument against this movie yet. I haven't heard one good argument against the trailer yet. Like, the only good arguments I've seen have been the arguments that I've made against it, which were that, you know, do we really need a token character in there? Do we really need everything to be CGI, if it even is? Like, you know, there are legitimate complaints to be had there. There are legitimate concerns to be had with this movie, but not legitimate enough to say that it's not worth watching or that it doesn't look any good, you know? People are so quick to judge and quick to throw these things away because they're fucking remakes and they're tired of seeing remakes and they're, you know, quick to judge because they have this memory of what they, the memory that they cherish of what they think this franchise was, and their nostalgia blinders are on, you know, their rose-colored glasses are on and they can't see the forest for the goddamn trees. They can't take the glasses off to realize, oh, it wasn't as pretty as I remembered it, was it? Oh, nobody's doing that. So, if you're having that kind of a problem, I highly encourage you to take off your goddamn rose-colored glasses. Go watch the movies after you've taken the goddamn glasses off. Go watch the cartoon after you've taken the goddamn glasses off. Compare it to what you see in the trailer. Compare it to what you see in the movie, and then tell me what you think. Tell me if you think that it's too generic. It's not following in the footsteps. It's not me. Shut up. This looks like a great fucking movie. All right? It looks like the most respectful remake or reimagining of a franchise that I have seen in a long fucking time. So, just shut up. That's all I have to say on that matter. Thanks for watching my little response to all of the fucking reaction videos that I'm seeing on this subject. I'll catch you guys later. Peace.